First, a story that's very close to home. Last week, one of the editors on this program, Michael O'Rourke, was just leaving work when his girlfriend called. There was a problem at their rented house. A couple of weeks earlier, their landlord had commissioned a builder to do some renovation and building work around the property. It turned out that the dust they'd all been walking through for days and that had covered their belongings, clothes and bedding was asbestos. WorkSafe had closed down the site. The couple's nightmare had just begun.
It was everywhere, so the backyard, inside and the front yard was just all covered in asbestos.
You'd have to have been on a different planet not to have heard about the dangers of asbestos.
If people are willing to take that risk, well then so be it. That's in the community, they will do that. You can't stop that, I guess.
Michael O'Rourke and Janet Lyle Martin have rented this Hackett house for 5 years. A few weeks ago, their landlady decided to renovate.
So we had some builders in our house for about a week and a half, clearing the backyard out. And then the start of last week, they started doing the bathrooms and the laundry inside the house. And that involved removing walls and flooring and all that kind of thing.
Last Wednesday, a WorkSafe inspector visited the site.
I'd just gotten home from visiting some of my friends and I got a knock at the door. It was probably about 7:10, and there was an inspector there who said that they got an anonymous tip-off about the skip out the front, and so I kind of got a little bit confused, and he ended up saying that the tip was about asbestos. So because I've known a lot of people that have died and are dying from asbestosis, as soon as he said that, I kind of freaked out a bit.
And I got a call from Janet letting me know what was going on, and the inspector waited out the front in his car till I got home from work.
I actually invited him into the house because I said that we could wait for Michael to get home to get the contact details. And he looked at me and goes, I don't want to be rude, but I'm not stepping anywhere near that house. So as soon as he said that, I was like, well, I'm getting out.
At that point, our inspector had already had a look at the material in the skip out on the front footpath and had formed the conclusion that this looked like it could have asbestos in it. The builder, when contacted, denied that there was any asbestos in that material. Our inspector didn't take him at his word and immediately put a prohibition notice on any further work. And then we turned up the next day to make sure that that was upheld.
Further tests revealed the presence of 3 kinds of asbestos on the property.
The law requires that asbestos not be removed or worked on without it having been, 1, assessed appropriately, and 2, the removal should be done by licensed removalists. So taking that material and throwing it into a skip, for example, as appears to have happened in this circumstance, is not on.
25 years after its use in Canberra homes was abandoned, asbestos continues to leave a deadly legacy. It was widely used in building materials and as insulation up until 1985, when its capacity to cause cancer and respiratory diseases was finally recognised. In the late 80s, the ACT and Commonwealth governments spent $100 million removing asbestos in loose fibre form from Canberra roof cavities. But it's still present in many homes, in bonded or sheet form, commonly in bathroom and laundry walls. Although it's quite safe inside the wall, once it's disturbed, dangerous fibres can be released into the air. Janet Lyle Martin was working from home throughout last week as the builders demolished garden sheds and knocked down bathroom walls.
I was going in and out to get tea, but other than that, I was keeping down the other end to keep the cat out of the way. And when we came out, once they left, the entire other end of the house was just covered in dust and things, and because it was actually in the air as well. I was lying on the floor doing my yoga in the lounge room that was covered in dust, and so we were wiping it down with towels.
Complaining about the levels of dust on the TV set, things like that.
So we were actually wiping it down ourselves so that I could lie on the floor and do my yoga.
The couple had to leave most of their belongings in the house as they may be contaminated, and they're staying with family while they wait for the experts to determine what, if anything, can be retrieved. They've also seen a doctor and been told they've had a heavy exposure to asbestos.
He said it can take anywhere between 20 to 60 years for things to show up. So, and obviously there's different things that can occur from it. So
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 different types of cancer, I think.
Is that scary?
yes, especially I got really scared about it, especially because I've watched people dying from it. So I kind of know what can happen and how painful and how horrible it is. So that doesn't make you feel so good.
The builder in this particular case didn't return our calls. The WorkSafe Commissioner says he will investigate the incident and decide whether to refer it to the Director of Public Prosecutions.
The consequences can be quite high. Fines can definitely run into the tens of thousands of dollars. The maximum penalty under health and safety law is $1.1 million. Now that's a fairly extreme situation, but the penalties are very high.
In general, he says, although most builders are very aware of the dangers of asbestos, the message clearly hasn't got through to everyone.
There's no excuse for builders. It's their job. They do this work. They work in the industry. Homeowners are relying on builders to tell them this. I can only guess as to their motivation, but I must say that my personal conclusion is they're doing it for financial gain, to undercut their competitors. I can't believe that they are doing it because they don't know about the dangers of asbestos. There's been so much information over the recent years about that I can only conclude it's because of money.
The Master Builders Association says it's not responsible for the actions of rogue builders.
We can only control what's within our realm to control. And again, we have a responsibility, and we accept that responsibility to get out there and work with our industry to make sure, again, they expose themselves to the minimum risk in terms of their own building practices, and certainly minimise risks in terms of their clients. And I'm pleased to say that we're very confident that most of our members are actually doing that.
This one is known as chrysolidite or blue asbestos, very dangerous.
John Miller says the association runs frequent asbestos awareness courses for members.
We make them available, we tell our industry. We've delivered training to more than 200 people in this current year, and as I said, over 800 people since they started 4 years ago. So we've still got a lot more work. We know that it's a big industry out there.
Nobody can go into that roof space unless they're a licensed asbestos removalist.
It's been suggested that everyone working on a building site should be required to undertake one of these courses to increase the chances of asbestos being recognised early. But that's a step too far for the MBA.
You've got to be careful not to overreact here. As I said, look, this has been an issue. It's been highlighted in a week. It's not something that's present in every property around Canberra. We've made that point earlier, as I said. But however, if you suspect that you are in a situation where you might be confronting asbestos, the presence of asbestos, well, then the best thing to do is to actually get yourself properly trained to actually deal with it.
But that's up to the individual builder.
In the individual builder.
John Miller says it's not just builders who make mistakes with asbestos, and he'd like to see a renewed public education campaign about the issue.
We see a high instance now of do-it-yourself renovations, particularly around the lifestyle shows. And so, it's not necessarily just the building construction industry itself. It's an awareness issue for residents around Canberra who undertake a lot of these jobs themselves.
We've all seen the home renovation programs that are on TV. They're encouraging people to get in and do that themselves. The reality is it's just as much breaking the law for a homeowner to do this as it is for a builder. The work can be done, but it needs to be by licensed people who know how to handle it appropriately.
You need to get it checked out first whether there is asbestos there.
Exactly. And look, there's a one rule of thumb. If your house was built in the mid-1980s or earlier, then it's almost definitely going to have asbestos, and you should definitely get it checked.
For those considering renovations, the ACT government website www.asbestos.act.gov.au contains advice about how to manage asbestos safely. It should only be removed by professionals licensed to do so. Recent research has identified a third wave of asbestos-related diseases. They initially affected miners and then tradespeople. Now, many people have been and continue to be exposed to the substance through home renovations.
If you saw a stream and someone said to you, there's toxic material in there, low likelihood that you'd be affected, but if you did get affected, it would be life-threatening, you wouldn't jump in. and yet people handle asbestos, and it's exactly the same scenario.
The WorkSafe Commissioner is urging the public to be alert to the dangers, whether they're doing the renovations themselves or hiring others.
I ask all homeowners to be vigilant about what builders are actually doing on their sites, and if they're in any doubt, contact us and we'll have a look at it. I guess that's going against the Australian tradition to dob in, but this is a really serious matter, and no one wants to play around with this.
Because people's lives really are at stake here.
Absolutely, and anyone who knows anything about asbestos-related diseases knows you wouldn't wish that upon anyone.
I don't understand how people could kind of not think about it, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of frustrated that I was in the house, and that if they did know, they willingly did it knowing that I was in the house. So that kind of...
I think at the end of the day, if we've lost everything, it's only items. As long as we're healthy, that's the only thing I'm concerned about at the moment is health. The fact that you were working in it all day, you've had a heavy exposure.
But the most frustrating thing about that is I'm not going to know for years. Yeah. So, like the clothing and things like that, you'll find out soon enough. And obviously, hopefully we can recover some things. But instead we just kind of sit and wait and hope that nothing happens.
Kate Evans was the reporter. And as we said in the story, this program made a number of attempts to contact the builder concerned, but none of our calls was returned. WorkSafe told us earlier today that the builder's licence has now been suspended by the ACT Planning and Land Authority, pending further investigations.